Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at subtracting decimals. It is one of the most important topic in grade 7 maths. And I assure you that by the end of today's lesson or video, you'll be able to subtract decimals with ease and with accuracy. You should be able to solve real life problems involving decimal subtraction. And finally, you'll get a whooping confidence in your exams because you are a master when it comes to subtracting decimals. So make sure you have your notebooks and pencils ready and let's get right into it. All right, so what are we to achieve at the end of today's video or lesson? You should be able to subtract decimals accurately. You should be able to solve word problems involving decimal subtraction. And finally, you should be able to apply decimal subtraction in real life situations like distance, money, and measurement. But before we get right to solving some examples as far as subtracting decimal is concerned, let's note this key rule because it is the golden rule that will help us get accurate answers when it comes to subtracting decimals. So it says, before you do anything else, make sure the decimal points line up perfectly vertically. So, before you do anything else, make sure you align the decimal point perfectly and it should be in a vertical way. The reason being that it will help or ensure you are subtracting the correct place values, the tens from tens, the hundreds from hundreds, the thousands from thousands. So these are very, very important things. So you need not to forget what you learned in grade 5, grade 6 on the decimal place values chart. The decimal place value chart is going to be very useful when it comes to subtracting decimals. All right, so let's look at the first example and then solve it together. So in our first example, we are subtracting 2.34 from 5.67. So 2.34 from 5.67. So as the rule suggests, we need to what? First align the place values or the digits to their respective place values. We have the hundreds, we have the tens, we have the ones in this particular example. So let's get right into it. Now, we do the alignment. The 5.67 minus 2.34. So you first of all add from left to right. Left to right. Take note of that. To get the right answer, you start from where? Left to right, as you can see in the image on the screen. And then the next thing to do is to begin with your subtraction when you are done aligning the place values at their respective places. Excuse me. So we have 7 minus 4 as the first place value digit, which is at the hundredth position. 7 minus 4 gives us what? 3. So this is it. And then we have 6 minus 3, which gives us what? 3. And then we also have 5 minus 2, giving us 3. Remember, the decimal point has not changed. It is still where it is, well aligned and in a vertical position. When I say vertical, means it should be from up to down. That is the arrangement. All right. So I hope this is clear. First thing to do is to align the digits at their respective place values, play a position, and then you start the subtraction from left to right, as you can see the arrow indicating. And then after that, you do what? You go on to do your subtraction starting from left to right. All right. Excuse me. So we are going to continue with example number 2, where we are subtracting 3.75 from 8.58. There are times where you get something like 8.5. Sorry. 8.5. So 8.5, and then maybe you are to subtract 3.75 from 8.5. But looking at the alignment, they are not having the same place value position. This one is having only tens, but this one is having up to 100 position. Excuse me. Let this not worry or trouble you. Just simply what? Add 0 to this place so that it will have the same number of what? Decimal place position. So we have the tens, we have the 100 position, we have the tens, we have the 100 position. These are some of the things that you possibly might face. In the same way, in case this one have another digit, let's say 4, you don't panic, just continue adding 0 until you get the same place value position in both digits or numbers. All right, so let's get right into subtracting our problems on the screen. So we have 8.50 minus 3.75. So the first thing to do is to start from left and then to where? To right. Okay. Excuse me. You start from left to right. So now we have 0 minus 5. Remember, you cannot subtract 5 from 0. So what you need to do is to borrow 1 from the 5 and add it to the 0, giving you what? 10. So now you have 10. Remember, you cannot subtract 5 from 0. So you borrowed 1 from the next digit, which is the 10th position, and add it to the 100th position, giving you 10. And after getting that, you now have 10 as a digit where you can subtract 5 from it. So you now have 10 minus 5, which gives us what? 5. Okay. Remember, you took 1 from the 5 here. So it is no longer 5, but rather what? 4. So this is why that is the reason why you saw the 4 here, or you see the 4 here. So now the 4 here is the remainder after taking 1 out of the 5 here in the 10th position. So now we have 4 minus 7. But remember, you cannot subtract 7 from 4, or you cannot take away 7 from 4. So what you need to do is to borrow 1 from the next digit, which is 8. Add it to the 4, giving you what? 14. So you now have 14 as a whole number under the 10th category. So you now subtract 7 from the 14, giving you what? 7. So remember, we've taken or deducted 1. We borrowed 1 from the 8. So we are left with what? 7. So we now have 7 minus what? 3. And 7 minus 3 give us what? 4. So our final answer is 4.75. I hope it is clear. Take note, in regrouping, borrow from next column when digit is smaller. When it comes to subtraction, or even in when it comes to subtraction, you do what? You borrow. When you are to borrow, you borrow from what? The next column when the digit is what? Smaller. In here, 0 is smaller compared to 5. That is why we need to borrow from the next column 5. to make it 10 so that you'll be able to do the subtraction accurately. I believe you are getting on course with this explanation here. All right, let's move on to look at some other example. So you can pause the video and possibly try this one and then come back to the video to check if your answer is correct. Now, we have a word problem. Most of the times it can be in a statement form and it could also be in a direct mathematical application or direct mathematical statement. So we say that Maria had 10.50 cedis. That is the amount he had. Now she bought a sandwich for 4.75 cedis. How much does she have left? Remember the word left. So when you see this word, it is giving us or telling us that we are to subtract. She is having 10.5 cedis or dollars, and then she used 4.75 cedis to buy sandwich. So now how much is she left with? So in writing this mathematical statement, we have to get the money she's having as a personal money. She sent out to go and buy the sandwich. That is 10.50 pesos. And then he was able to use 4.75 out of that money. So you align it perfectly. Remember, tenth to tenth, 100 to 100, ones to ones, and then 100 to 100. Or sorry, tens to tens. So this is tens. As you can see here, the first one is tens. We have the ones. And then here we have the tenth. And then we have what? The hundredth as the second digit. And then it continues that way. So after aligning your decimal point where it's supposed to be, what you need to do, placing the hundreds at where it's supposed to be, and the tens as what it's supposed to be, the ones and the tens, then you go on to do your subtraction. So we have 0 minus 5, which of course we know it is not possible. So you borrow 1 from here, and then you'll be left with what? 4 here. Then you add that 1 to this one, making what? 10. So you now have 10 minus 5, giving you 5. Remember, you have 4 here. So 4 minus 7 is impossible. So what you need to do is to borrow 1 from here. But here too is 0. You cannot borrow anything from 0. So the only place you can borrow is the next digit. So you go on to the next digit. Now the next digit is 1. You add it to the 0 here, giving you 10. And now you now have 10 here. But here will now become what? 0. So here becomes 0. And then here becomes what? 10. Now, if here is 10, let me write it here. So here is 10 now. So you borrow 1 from here to the 4, making 14. Excuse me. Making 14. So you now have 14. After borrowing 1 from the 10, remember it is no longer 10. It has now become what? 9. Please don't get confused. So now 14 minus 7 gives us what? 7. And then we have 9 here. 9 minus 4 gives us what? 5. So that is how come we have 5.75 as our final exam. Remember, this is quite complicated, but you need to follow it. It is easy when you understand the principles used here. The first thing we look at is 0 you cannot take away 5 from what? 0. So you borrow 1 from the 5, leaving the 4. So you add it to the 0, making 10. So 10 minus 5 give us what? 5. And then the 4 minus 7, you can't subtract 7 from 4. So you borrow 1 from the next digit. And unfortunately, the next digit here is 0. You cannot borrow anything from 0. So you move to the next digit in the tens place. So that is 1. So you borrow 1, leaving 0. You add that 1 to the 0, making 10. Now, you have 10 here. Remember, this is not where we are. We are here. We are solving this particular one. So we have 4 here, and we cannot subtract 7 from 4. That's why we are looking for 1 to add up. So we take 1 from the 10 here, adding it to the 4, making 14. So you now have a number that you can subtract 7 from. So 14 minus 7 give us what? 7. And then you place your decimal point, then you move to the next level. Now we have 10 here, we've taken 1, it remains 9. So 9 minus 4 giving us what? 5. So our final answer is 5.75. I hope it is clear. All right, let's look at example number 2. It says a car traveled 12.50 kilometers in the morning and 7.25 kilometers was uphill. How much distance did the car travel on flat road? On flat road. Remember that the car traveled 12.50 kilometers in the morning and 7.25 kilometers was on the uphill. So it tells you that if you take this one out of the total, the remaining is for the flat roads. All right. So first, you align your decimal point. So we have 12.50 and then we have 7.25. Let the decimal point be aligned and then the other numbers will follow as such. So we have the tens, the hundredth, we have the ones, we have the tens. So we start with what? Our subtraction. So 0 minus 5 is impossible. So you borrow 1 from where? The 5. Remaining what? 4. So you write a 4 on top. And then now we have 10 here. So now you subtract 5 from 10, leaving you 5. Now we are left with 4 here. So 4 minus 2 is possible, which gives us what? 2. Then you bring your decimal point. Please remember to align the decimal point. Then you have 2 minus 7. Remember, you cannot subtract or take away 7 from 2. So what you need to do is to borrow 1 excuse me, from the next column, which is the tens, and add it to what? The 2. Remember, when you borrow 1 from here, you'll be left with 0 here, and then here you have what? 12. So now you can subtract 12, you can subtract 7 from 12, leaving you what? 5. So our final answer is 5.25. Remember, this is 0 and there is nothing wrong when you leave it as such. So we now have 5.25 as our final answer, which the car spent on the flat road, and it is in kilometers. I hope we are following this example keenly. Our final problem or challenge is a shopkeeper had 20.50 liters of water. He sold 8.75 liters to a customer and 5.20 liters to another customer. How much water is left? So as far as you see the word left, it tells you that you are going to subtract all that is sold from the total amount of liters of water that he has. So the initial stock, which is 20.50, and then he was able to sell out 8.75, and then another customer to sell 5.20. So let's take it step by step so that you'll be able to follow it with keen attention. All right, so let's start with the first sales. So he was able to sell 8.75 liters. So let's take it from the total or the initial liters of water that he has. So we have 20.50 minus 8.75. So you align them. The ones is here. We have the hundredth. We have the 10th position. And then we have the ones, and then we have what? The tens. So you have to take note of this. All right. So now we start our subtraction problem. 0 minus 5 is impossible. You borrow 1 from here, remaining 4. You add it to the 0, making 10. So you now subtract 5 from 10, leaving you 5. And then we have 4 minus 7, which is impossible. And then you borrow 1 from the next column, which is the ones column, but it is not possible because it is 0. So you borrow 1 from the 2, leaving you what? 1 here, and then making this place 10. So now you borrow 1 from the 10 because this is not where we are. We are here. So you borrow 1 from where? The 10 to add to this, making what? 14. And then after borrowing, this place becomes what? 9. Okay. So now we can go ahead to subtract 7 from 14, leaving us what? 7. Then you put down your decimal point. It should be well aligned. Now we have 9 here. So 9 minus 8 gives us what? 1. And then 1 minus 0 or nothing gives us what? 1. So our final answer is 11.75 liters. That is when you subtract the first cell. So now that you have 11.75 as the balance of water or liters of water remaining, you now move on to subtract the second cell, which is 5.20 liters from the 11.75 that is left. So you write your 11.75 and then you subtract it from 5.20. So you align it correctly with your decimal point at the center, then you start or begin your subtraction. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 2 is 5. Then bring your decimal point. 1 minus 5 is impossible. So you borrow 1 from where? Here, the next column, which is the tens, and then you'll be left here 0 or nothing. And then you add it to this, giving you what? 11. So when you subtract 5 from 11, you are left with what? 6. So this is the final liters of water left. Remember to add the unit, which is liters. That is why we put here the unit here. So remember, all values are measured in liters. You can also equally do it this way. We have 20 point, sorry, 20.50. Then you have 8.75. So you align it accurately. 8.75. Then you can also add the 5.20. Okay. All right. So now, then you now do your subtraction. Okay. So 0 minus 5 minus 0. You see, it's impossible. But you see, with this step at your stage, it might be somehow complicated to you, where you might be a little bit confused. So what you need to do is to do the 2 steps that I have taught you here. This will help you, get the right understanding. And then you continue to do the second step so that you'll be able to do it with ease. Because if you clamp all the 3 together, you might get confused. So I will encourage you to follow these steps, the step 1 and then the step 2, so that you will be able to do it with ease. I hope that is clear. All right. So let's move on to the point or the summary of all that we have done so far. We should understand that in subtracting decimals, the first thing to put at the back of your mind is aligning the decimal point to their respective place values. That is very, very important. And the second thing is that when subtracting, you start from left to right. And you should also understand that you can borrow if the top digit is smaller than the bottom digit. This is very important because you cannot continue with the subtraction if the top number is smaller or the top digit is smaller than the bottom digit. You can't continue. And then finally, check your answers to make sure that what everything makes sense in the context of subtracting decimals before you proceed. So this is all that we have for you today, and it's a great work. I thank you so much for joining me. You did very well today on learning how to subtract decimals. And if this lesson helped you, please, I will encourage you to like, subscribe to the channel, and share with a friend who need help in this topic. And please don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that anytime I release a new video, you will not miss it out. Please practice all the examples that we did today in your notebook, and I will see you in the next lesson where we'll be learning how to multiply decimals. Keep learning and keep improving. Remember, the best way to learn math is to practice. So keep practicing and you'll be that expert you always wish to be. God bless you for your time. Goodbye.